Good morning, all.
Hi,
Good morning. How are you?
I'm all right. How are you?
I'm good.
That's good. How's Dara?
She's very excited. Her interview went well yesterday.
Yeah.
So we'll see. Now she'll have another one with the board of directors, but I don't know when that one is.
Uh-huh.
It hasn't been scheduled yet.
All righty. Well, this is exciting,
I must bow down before her.
of course. Well, that was true even
I've been
before
doing
this.
that since she was born,
I
so
just said that was before this. That's true. Yes. So, ah, I don't know. At least it's a nice day today.
yes, and
Yeah.
tomorrow's supposed to be nice too.
Yeah. I think the whole week. Yeah,
Well, I'll be happy with 3 or 4 days that are nice.
I know. I know. So, yeah, we're gonna go to, I guess I've been calling around to replace the toilet tank lid. That
Yeah.
got, so, Home Depot doesn't carry it, Lowe's, but there's this North Shore Faucets on, Dempster, not too far from here. And,
Yeah.
they said they have 3 lids that they think will work, but we should bring in the pieces,
Oh,
to make sure that,
how many pieces are there?
about 5.
Oh, that's not too bad.
Yeah, wait, hold on. Jeff's number? Um, 676-1294.
Should I use this phone?
Yeah, you can use this phone, but that means I'll go in the other room with my cell phone. All right. All right. So,
And I lost internet last night 4 times.
really?
Yeah,
I wonder what,
I have no idea.
that happens
Good morning,
occasionally.
Rabbi.
Good morning.
Good morning, Rabbi.
Good
That
morning.
happens sometimes very early in the morning here. The internet goes down and then it comes back. I don't know.
Early in the morning, I get slow. It's real slow. Like it'll download so slowly that everything just buffers and buffers and buffers. But
Hmm.
last night it just went out completely, came back, went out, came back.
Huh. I wonder if they were, well, I don't know.
I don't know either.
I don't know. Never mind. I'm not going to speculate.
No,
I think it has to do with the satellites in space. That's always what I assume.
space lasers.
Who knows what's going on in space? They don't tell us
Yeah.
everything. They just
No.
don't tell us everything.
Nope.
We know
They
nothing.
certainly don't.
I know nothing. Okay.
That exactly.
I'll sink. Okie dokie. So we were talking about believing in another deity, the prohibition of believing in another deity, and of making images, idols, making them for yourself and making them for others. And then we were talking about fashioning items that you don't intend to be an idol, or it's not going to be used as an idol, but it's an image of, again, in the Rambam, in the Hebrew that we have, it says image of Baalei Chayim, which means living things, and you're making them out of, you're sculpting them or carving them. Even though you don't intend for them to be an idol, you can't do them. But again, it seemed like from the Rambam that he's talking about objects that are still worshipped by others. Now, you don't intend for them to be worshipped, but they are worshipped by others. But then he did say that this law is expanded. He doesn't go into detail about how it is expanded in other places. He said it, he's sticking to the more simple approach to it, but that eventually the law is expanded. And we were talking at the end of class last time about how it might be even talking about things as innocuous as dolls, or other kinds of images of people or animals or things, and that there are people that are very careful about it. And it is complex halacha. Like when you look it up, you're not so sure why you should be able to have a doll, which is like a fully representative, whatever it is supposed to be. Clearly, there are people who still have them, but it's not so easy when you're going through the laws there to figure it out. Okay, now we have that Hashem, prohibited us from bowing to an idol. And that is his, may be blessed, saying, you shall not bow to them. And it is clear that by our saying idol, we mean anything worship besides God. The intention is not only bowing and nothing else. Indeed, he mentioned one of the ways of worship, meaning to say bowing, but we're also prohibited from sacrificing to them, offering them libations, burning incense to them. One who's transgressed one of these and bowed, sacrificed, offered libations, or burned incense is liable for stoning. So this is a death penalty case. The language of the Mechilta of Rabbi Yishmael, which is one of the collections of Midrash, is one who sacrifices to God shall be proscribed. That word cherem is used to there. We have thus heard the punishment, and it's understood again through the oral transmission that this means stoning. We've thus heard the punishment. From where do we know the prohibition? So this is a rule of the Talmud. The Gemara almost always asks this about death penalty cases. The rule is that there has to be a statement of prohibition and a separate statement of the punishment. So we have to have been told it's forbidden in one location, and then we have to be told what the punishment is. You need both. So we've heard the punishment, but where did you hear the prohibition? In other words, what's the source for the prohibition? Hence, we learn to say, you shall not bow to them, you shall not worship them. Sacrifice was included in serving, and it was singled out to teach that just as sacrificing is distinctive in that we worship the heavens in a similar way, and one is liable for it, whether he worships it or he does not worship it, so too one is liable for all the ways that are similar to how we worship the heavens, whether he worships it or he does not worship it. The content of this statement is that these four types of worship, being bowing, sacrificing, offering libations, and burning incense, through which we have been commanded that we worship God, may be blessed. So anyone who worships an idol through one of them is liable for stoning, even if this is not one of the ways of worshiping this thing that was worshipped. So let's say the particular group that worships this particular idol, let's say they don't offer sacrifices to it. Even though that's not the way they worship it, but if a Jew sacrificed to that same idol, he would still be liable for the death sentence. And that is what is called not in the way of its worship. Yet, since he worshipped it in one of these ways, he's liable for stoning if he was volitional. One of the requirements for the death penalty is that you know what you're doing, you know it's forbidden, and you're still doing it. Excision, or cherem, if the court did not know about him, excision, in this case, they mean excommunication. If the court did not know about him or did not execute the punishment, or to bring a sacrifice if he was inadvertent. So there's, this excision is not cherem, this excision is kares, Okay, so let's go back. if this person intentionally worshipped an idol using one of the forbidden methods, and it's clear to us that they intended to do it, they were warned, there are witnesses, there was a trial, that person would be put to death. If that some of those elements were not clear to us, if the court couldn't put him to death, then he's subject to the kares level penalty. The kares level penalty is that you are cut off. This is a heavenly penalty, and it could mean the person dies young, their children die while they're alive, or it could have implications for the world to come, like if whether or not they have what we would call a place in the world to come. So that's those two. And then let's say he did it by accident. So this person, for some reason, did not think that this would be prohibited. There were there's a book called The Jew and the Lotus that is about a group of Jews who traveled to Dharamsala to meet the Dalai Lama several decades ago. They were there at the invitation of the Dalai Lama. He was looking for wisdom and advice from Jews as his new, many Tibetans had moved to India, escaped to India from China, from Chinese control. And now he has a people in exile. He's leading a people in exile, and he's looking to various cultures to glean wisdom as to how to successfully lead his people in exile. And the Jews who have survived in exile for thousands of years must have some wisdom. So he invited these people to come. Now it was quite a little group that went there, and the book about it is a beautiful book. I really love the book about it. There was also apparently a documentary about it, but I've never seen the documentary. Amongst the people that went were Yitz and Blue Greenberg. Yitz and Blue Greenberg were Orthodox Jews that were part of this group. And one of their questions that they had to resolve was, what are they going to do when they get to see the Dalai Lama? Because they're going to visit him in a place that's called the Hall of Gods. And he himself is revered as an incarnation of a god. So would they bow to him? That was their question. Would they bow to him? And I believe they came to the conclusion that it would be okay to bow to him. That would be an example. Let's say there are people that disagreed with them, and let's say it made its way to court, and the courts, a Jewish court, disagreed with them and said that that was in fact forbidden. It's forbidden to bow down to an idol, and he amounted to an idol, or the fact that he's in a hall of idols, whatever the reasoning. So let's say they were told they made a mistake. That would be called a mistake. They thought they're doing the right thing. No, they thought what they were doing was okay, and then they find out afterwards it was not okay. That's a type of mistake. Another type of mistake, but so there could be mistakes like that about idolatry. And so there are ways of dealing with that. In some cases, you would bring a sin offering as a way of making up for that mistake, of repairing the damage of that mistake. So that is bring a sacrifice if it was inadvertent. Likewise, when one accepts something as a god in a way of accepting, and this prohibition has already been repeated, I mean, so what does that mean? And likewise, when one accepts something as a god in a way of accepting, what does that mean? So he is liable. It doesn't say, in other words, if you accept another deity as your deity, so this is different than just believing in it, right? This is accepting a deity, and you did it in some manner, but I guess you didn't do it in one of those forbidden manners, but you just accepted it as your deity. So you are also liable. Usually chayiv means that you're liable to bring an offering. I'll be honest, I don't know what this scenario is, what they're talking about here. But somehow you have accepted the deity in some manner, so you're liable. Usually chayiv means you're liable for an offering. Well, let's see if there's any more clarity from this. This prohibition has already been repeated, meaning to say the prohibition of their worship through one of these four ways, even when it is not its way. And that is his may be exalted saying, and that they may offer their sacrifices no more to the goats. And the language of the Sifra, goats is nothing other than demons. So now we're talking about making offerings to demons. This is one of the claims that was made by those people who were questioning the offering of the goat on Yom Kippur. There are two goats that are meant to be identical goats that are brought as part of the Yom Kippur service. And then lots are drawn, and one is La Hashem and one is La Azazel. So one is to God and one is to Azazel. So the one that's to God is offered as a korban, as an offering in the Beis HaMikdash. The one that is to Azazel is brought into the desert and is brought onto a cliff and pushed off a cliff. So the question is, what is the offering to Azazel? We're just going to look here for 1 second. Okay, so this is from Rav Ezra Bick. It's part of the collection of essays on etzion.org. A lot of them are from virtual Beit Midrash. This week's shir is a continuation of a previous one, and that is concerned with the nature of evil. The topic, however, is not the suffering of man, but the metaphysical nature of evil itself and its place in the divine reality. As such, the discussion will not be moral in nature, but metaphysical. The question that lies behind the Ramban's analysis is not the goodness of God, but the unity of God. Our text is the commentary of the Ramban to Parshat Azazel, the goat sent out to the desert on Yom HaKippurim. The practice of releasing a goat, described as a sin offering to the desert, to Azazel, raises obvious philosophical difficulty, but also a halachic one, since any sacrifice, if it were to God, is prohibited outside the sanctuary. To this one must add the difficulty with the word Azazel, which has no clear meaning in Hebrew. The Ramban begins by explaining that Azazel refers to some sort of evil power, as opposed to the explanation of Rashi that it just means a hard and rocky place. So again, according to Rashi, Azazel is just the place. But the Ramban says it's a evil power. He first cites the Ibn Ezra, who hints that the explanation of Azazel is found at the end of 33. The Ramban, who, as we know, believes in not disclosing secrets, nevertheless here feels free to explain the Ibn Ezra, because oftentimes the Ibn Ezra will do that. The Ibn Ezra will also, when he's talking about something that he considers to be like a mystical secret, he'll start to be very coded in how he talks. A lot of times the Ramban just will say, this is, and the enlightened will understand, or something like that, and then he stops. But here he feels free to explain the Ibn Ezra, since, as he states, Chazal have already done so in several places. The reference of the Ibn Ezra is, as Rabbi Chevelle explains in a footnote, to the 33rd verse following the present one, which is, and they shall no longer offer their sacrifices to demons. That's our verse. They shall know, the Rambam with an M, Maimonides, just quoted. So this is the verse that the Ibn Ezra is cryptically referencing, and the Ramban is going to explain. The Ramban then cites Bereshit Rabbah, which associates the Seir HaMishtaleach, the goat that was sent off, with Esav, Ish Seir, who is a hairy man. The Ramban, of course, understands this is not the historical figure of the brother of Yaakov, but as the twin and opposite figure of Israel, the power of evil. He makes this explicit in his next quote from Pirkei de Rebbe Eliezer, which is very early Midrash, that identifies the destination of the Seir Mishtaleach as Samael, which is one of the words for the dark side or the negative side. We now have only to understand who is Samael. The quote from Pirkei de Rebbe Eliezer is as follows: that is why on Yom Kippur they should give Samael a bribe to not cancel their sacrifice, as it is written, one lot to God and one to Azazel. The lot of God is a burnt offering, and the lot of Azazel is a goat of sin offering, and all the sins of Israel are on it. Samael sees that there is no sin on them in Yom Kippur, because Yom Kippur we are cleansed of sin. He says to God, Master of the worlds, you have one people on the earth who are like the ministering angels in heaven. Just as the ministering angels are barefoot, so Israel is barefoot on Yom Kippur. Just as the ministering angels neither eat nor drink, so does Israel not eat or drink on Yom Kippur. Just as the ministering angels cannot bend, so Israel stands on Yom Kippur. Just as the ministering angels, peace serve as an intermediary between them, so Israel, peace serves as an intermediary between them on Yom Kippur. Just as the ministering angels are free of sin, so Israel is free of sin on Yom Kippur. God hears the testimony of Israel from their accuser, so he's the Satan, and he atones for the altar and for the temple and for the priests and for all the congregation. So according to Pirkei de Rebbe Eliezer, the purpose of this is that it inspires the accuser, the Satan, to praise Israel. It is clear from this quote that Azazel is Samael, who is the accuser, who's the Satan of Israel, in other words, the Satan. And the Ramban goes on to explain, see, they have told his name and his actions. And this is the secret of the matter, for they used to worship other gods who are the angels, offering them sacrifices which are for them a sweet savor. Now the Torah totally prohibits the acceptance of their divinity or any other worship of them. But God commanded them, Kippur, we send a goat to the desert to the prince who rules in desolate places, which is appropriate as he is a master of that place. And from the emanation of his strength comes destruction and desolation. For he is the cause of the stars of the sword, and blood and wars and quarrels and wounds and plagues and divisions and destruction. And in general, the soul of the sphere of Mars. His portion among the nations is Esav, who is the nation who inherits the sword and wars. And among the animals, his portion is the goat. And in his portion are also the demons, who are called the Mazikim in the language of the rabbis, and Seirim in the language of scripture, for both he and his nation are called Seir, which is either goat, demon, or another name for Edom, the land of Esav. The Ramban is describing here a picture of evil, the forces of strife, desolation, and destruction that ascribes to it metaphysical reality. The gods of the nations are also real and identified with angels, who are princes of different areas of the world. One of those angels, the prince of Esav and the soul of Mars, is the source of the power of evil in this world. Okay, so in other words, the Ramban is describing a kind of metaphysical structure to the world. Just like there is a physical structure to the world, there are atoms and there are molecules and so on. There are building blocks of the natural world, and there's energy, there's gravity, there's electricity, there's there's all sorts of energies in the world. So and that go along with the physical world. So when let's say you're studying physics, you're studying all these different kinds of things. So when you study metaphysics, when you study that other realm that is not of the physical, so you are studying also a system. That's how they understood it, that there's a system for that too. And the language of that system, instead of being about atoms and molecules and such, the language is about angels and demons and other kinds of elements. So there's a system. The entire system is created by God and under the general control of God. But just like the sun has certain, we could say, a certain power and responsibility, so there could be something like the sun in a spiritual world. In other words, it's a created entity, but it's given a certain purview. It's given a certain realm, just like the human being is given the responsibility of management of the animals and the fish and the birds on Earth. So there could be, all manner of created entities that are given a certain power. Amongst those is Satan. Satan is an accuser. Satan is the angel of death. Satan is the tempter, the Reish Lakish, the Talmudic figure, says that in other words, there is within the non-physical world, there are all these created entities that have roles to play. So one of them is sometimes called Samael, sometimes he's called Satan, and as Reish Lakish said, he's also called the angel of death. He's also called the Yetzer Hara. The Ramban is describing here a picture of evil, the forces of strife, desolation, and destruction that ascribe to it metaphysical reality. The gods of the nations are also real. In other words, in this thing, they are real entities. They are not independent. This is the difference between this and polytheism. They don't have truly independent realms. God runs the whole thing. But in our experience, they are like a governor who would have a certain area under his control. If you want to speak to the guy, you have to speak to the governor. If you live in a certain place, you got to speak to the mayor, even though the mayor is not ultimately in charge. He has certain responsibilities for which he's in charge. One of those angels, the Prince of Asa and the soul of Mars, is the source of power of evil in the world. The figure of Samael as an angel of God, whose job is to be the accuser, a sort of prosecuting attorney in the court of God, is familiar with rabbinic literature, from rabbinic literature. But the association of the Satan with the forces of evil, of war and destruction is new with the Ramban. The Ramban here combines astrology, the star of Mars as the source of bloodshed, with demonology and with traditional Jewish political dichotomy, Yaakov and Esav, and puts it in a package of angels, divine beings, or in fact, gods of nations. And in doing so, the Ramban confers reality on idolatry, claiming that the nations worship real and powerful beings. What is even more striking, he confers reality on evil, a force with its own dominion and celestial power and guardian angel. So remember, this is the Ramban, Nachmanides, not the Rambam, Maimonides. We are studying the Rambam. The Rambam quoted the verse that is the key verse for this discussion, but he does not agree with this. He does not agree that there are these forces, that they have power. He doesn't believe that the gods of the nations are based on anything with real power. He believes they're, made up ideas. But the Ramban does not. The Ramban suggests, Nachmanides suggests, that they are real forces. They're not independent forces, but they are real forces. And they play a part in God's grand design. The idea is developed extensively in the Zohar under the name Sitra Achra, the other side, meaning the other side as opposed to the side of Kedusha, which is the side of holiness. At times in later development, it became so powerful a force as to resemble dualism, with two warring forces of good and evil dividing the world between them. We are skirting very closely with a challenge to strict monotheism here. And the Ramban's warning that the Torah prohibits our worship of these gods is not sufficient to blunt the metaphysical challenge to the Unitarian basis of Judaism. The Ramban's defense against the dangers of dualism is found in his explanation of the rite of the Seir HaMishtaleach. The intention of the Seir HaMishtaleach is not to be an offering from us to him, God forbid, but rather our intention should be that we're fulfilling the will of our Creator who has commanded us so. The parable of this is if one were to make a banquet for the master, and the master would command the one making the banquet, give a portion to this particular servant of mine. In this case, the one who makes the banquet is not giving anything to the servant, is not honoring him, but rather everything is given to the master. The master is giving a reward to the servant, and he has fulfilled his master's command and has done in his master's honor all that he was commanded. So what he's suggesting is, in that case, where somebody, let's say the king ordered you to make a banquet, and then he wants you to give something in particular to his servant, you're really acting as an agent of the king there. You're not giving the gift. The king is giving the gift. That's how it has to be viewed. You can see how this skirts so close to polytheism. It's so, and the Rambam warned against this kind of thinking. The Rambam, we saw the Rambam in the laws of idolatry, where the Rambam explained how idolatry originally happens. And the Rambam said that it started with this. It started with people saying, I will worship the sun, not because the sun is actually the creator, but since the sun was created by God and has such an important role, when I worship the sun, I'm worshiping God. So this person is doing something what he believes he's doing is honoring God. But the Rambam says this just slides into worshiping the sun for its own sake. And after a while, there is no mention of the sun being created by God anymore. It's just a God. And so the Rambam says that's the beginning of idolatry. It's the slippery slope. This is so close to that. The only difference here between that is God is telling you to do this. You're not doing it of your own initiative. That's the only difference between the two. In this case, God is telling you to do this. In the other case that the Rambam with an M is mentioning, Maimonides, in that case, it's not God that's telling you to do it. You're doing it of your own initiative. And the difference between doing it of your own initiative and doing it because God told you to do it, according to Nachmanides, is the difference between a slippery slope into idolatry and one that is not. But it sounds so close. And you could see how scary it is. And something, you could see why the Ibn Ezra wouldn't even want to talk about it publicly or write about it publicly. He just alludes to it. And the Ramban's permit to write about this in his commentary on the Torah is that it's you see it already written about in other places. So since it's already written about in other places, I don't know if he meant the Pirkei de Rebbe Eliezer that we just saw before. He might have meant that. He might have meant other places. But you see, it's already since it's already out there, he feels like he can talk about it. But you can see how scarily close this is getting to polytheism. The most important point is that the Ramban defines Sam-El not only as not independent, but as a servant of God. Although the Ramban, speaking of evil as a power unto itself, is indeed revolutionary. Now, the Ramban, mystics would say it's not revolutionary. He's just representing the mystical tradition, and it's been there the whole time. Just like the Zohar, which they say is representing this mystical, this body of mystical teaching that's been around for thousands of years. So, or at least, by now, thousands of years. He's saying the Ramban because that's where we see it. We don't see earlier than him. We don't see really people spelling it out to the extent that the Ramban's explaining it. Although, as we did see, there's a Pirkei de Rebbe Eliezer, which is a much earlier work that is talking about these subjects, but he's the one who's really defining it. Although the Ramban, speaking of evil as a power unto itself, is indeed revolutionary, he places Sam-El within the framework of angels. There's no hint here of the concept of rebellious angels or fallen angels. Nowhere does the Ramban imply that Sam-El is warring with God. That very Christian concept has no basis in the Ramban's thought. On the contrary, Sam-El eats at the table at the banquet of God. Hence, it is not merely evil to serve him, it is absurd and meaningless. While it is true that the gods of the idolatrous nations really exist, according to the Ramban, serving them is a basic error of metaphysics, for they are all servants of God and hence cannot truly be worshipped. In other words, there is no point in worshiping them because they can't do anything for you that God wouldn't do. They can't, what he means here by they cannot be truly worshipped is that your worshiping them is not going to get you any special favor because they act as servants of God and at the behest of God. Of course, in the case of Sam-El, this raises a question of what service he provides since the things he does are evil. The answer to this, not given in this section of the Rambam, presumably belongs to the previous year where he, I think, must have discussed the notion of free will. In other words, the service provided by evil is that it challenges us. One of the ways it challenges us is allow us free will. There might be other ways that it challenges us as well. The answer to this is not given in this section of the Rambam, presumably belongs to the previous year. However, one additional point is in the definition of Sam-El as the accuser, his role in part of the process of justice. Okay. All right, we're going to actually stop here. that was all that we really needed for this. The reason we needed it is because that verse that the Rambam quotes about no longer offering offerings to literally goats, it means demons, is the sort of core verse here. And then we do have, this begs the question, how are we bringing this goat to Azazel? So the Ramban is giving an explanation here. It's not really an offering to Azazel. It's to instigate him to praise Israel during this time. But it just gets so close. And it's one of the things that's in a list of things that the nations chided Israel about. The nations chided Israel that you claim not to, do idolatrous practices. This looks like an idolatrous practice. So the Ramban's response would be, it looks like it, but it's not. It's not done for the same reason, and not, etc. But it's certainly one of those things that rides right on the edge of it. Okay, I am very grateful for this opportunity to learn with you guys today. Heavy
Thank
subject.
you.
All right,
Thank you,
and then I look forward to learning again our Ramban class on Monday, and with the women's class tomorrow morning. And
Thank
Sam,
you.
Sam, if you're gonna be at Nachanash, I look forward to seeing you there. All right, be well.